All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of the New Agent Podcast. We are here with Theo Bishop. Theo, how are you doing?
Having a fabulous day, man. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, it's always a pleasure. So, Theo is a loan officer, if you do not know. So, Theo, why don't you go ahead and give us a quick background about you, who you are, how long you've been in the business, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, my name's Theo Bishop, obviously, and I run the Bishop lending team at Nations Lending. And I've been in the business for about 4 years now, and from Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Okay. What high school did you go to?
I went to Homestead, actually. Go Spartans.
So what really made you want to get into the mortgage business?
Yeah, so my first, real kind of big boy job, I guess you could say it was, as a national account executive at an oil company in town. And then I had an agent that was also a mentor of mine introduce me to a good friend of mine at Ruoff. And they said, hey, the mortgage business would be great for you because your financial mindset and understanding of people and sales would be a great fit on helping first-time home buyers. So basically that mentor of mine introduced me to an LO, and that's how I became a junior LO.
Okay, so then you just started straight as a junior LO then with Ruoff?
Yep, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So before that, did you have any college background experience, or did you just go into it straight out of high school, or?
Yeah, man, my journey was really unique. Basically started with, went to college for a year, realized it really wasn't for me. And then I moved to Virginia Beach to be a manager for Best Buys. And then I moved back, got a job with Petroleum Traders Corporation. And then that's how I got into mortgages at that point. So no college experience, just really focused on the skills that I have to build my career.
Yeah, the social skills, they're fantastic. So going from, tell us a little bit how you become a junior LO. Is there a process you have to take the class, or is it kind of before that? How does that work?
Yeah, so once the biggest part is finding people that are willing to invest in you, because the mortgage business is so unique and there's so much to learn and know that you need to have really good mentors from the get-go. So that's where after I did the interviews at Ruoff, I had to get licensed. So you got to pass your NMLS licensing course, and then you have a course, sit for the test. When you pass that, you can become an LO, and then the junior LO really assists your senior loan officers on gaining business, maintaining business, doing some of the work that a senior loan officer can't keep up with because there's so much paperwork in our jobs.
Okay. So do you think that really helped you? Is that kind of the normal life cycle for a loan officer then, going from junior and then loan officer? Do a lot of people just jump straight from like course to loan officer?
That's a great question. Honestly, everyone does it differently and it's super unique. For me, I loved it because it allowed me to really learn and understand how to operate a team and operate a business successfully. So I really appreciate it because I was still learning guidelines and everything, but the average person will probably jump into it just green and right out of the gate, and they probably don't have the same level of mentorship if you're just starting out, whereas if you're learning someone and they have to make sure you're successful to help their business, that allows you to grow a little bit better, kind of like with you and Jake, right? Jake's teaching you how to increase your business and the fundamentals to start out.
Yeah, and it's a lot like, we preach on here pretty much everybody I've had on here who's been a real estate agent who was a transaction coordinator beforehand. They're like, do it, because you get to know the ins and out of the business. You get a nice feel for it of how a transaction should flow. And I think really just jumping in and kind of being around those people, it just rubs off on you slowly, and then you're just like, boom, I know how to do this, or picking up on how we frame conversations, because that's a big one when you're talking to clients, being able to control the narrative of just being able to control that conversation and say, breaking bad news, you hit on the bad news, but hey, this is what we're going to do. And I think just being around that really helps a lot of people.
Yeah, and that last part that you said there is so important, especially in my job, which is having that hard, authentic conversation right away. That's a huge challenge that a lot of people struggle with, especially new agents, especially new loan officers. And even to this day, it's something that I continuously try to improve upon, because when we're dealing with everyone's finances, it becomes very personal and emotional. And having that hard conversation up front, like, hey, I can't get you pre-approved for that $500,000 house you want. Realistically, we're going to have to put your pre-approval amount at like $300,000. So that's the being authentic with your conversations makes those hard conversations go a lot better.
Yeah, and it's always tough to have those conversations, especially because a lot of people see it as like an insult, like you're insulting them and saying, oh no, you're too poor for that or whatnot. And we see a lot of pushback on the agent side from that when we ask people for proof of funds prior to showings or pre-approvals. They see it as us attacking them and saying, I don't think you can, or I think you're too poor for that. And it's not that. It's just part of the process. I mean, it's something you have to get done.
And you're not attacking anyone. You're just trying to use your knowledge and expertise to help them to the best of your ability. And that's something that it can be a challenge in a lot of people's businesses, is like letting people know that we're always helping them and focused on serving them.
Yeah, and we get a lot of pushback for the pre-approval and proof of funds, when in reality it's to help them, because what happens is some agents, they'll just go out and show them as many properties as they want. We have a very specific system in place where you're getting pre-approved, or at least talking to a lender. If they're talking with one of our lenders and the lender's like, yeah, we're getting some documents on them, but they should be good to go, we'll go show them the house. That's no big deal. But when they haven't started anything and they want to go see something, it's 9 times out of 10 a firm no, we're not going to go see that. And the reason being is they go out and see a million different houses, they're not able to make an offer, and then they get burnt out and they're like, oh, this market's just so crazy, and then they're burnt out and they don't want to buy anymore. Whereas if they go through our pipeline that we want them to, I probably average 6-7 showing before an accepted offer.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a value to yourself too. You want to protect your time. You know how many people pull at your time, especially being from the loan officer side of things. Everybody wants to get lunch and go do this and that, and it's like, I only have so much time. So,
and that comes back to being intentional and prioritizing. But that kind of triggered a question for me. What's the hardest conversation you've ever had to have with a client? Without getting too personal in it, obviously.
Yeah, so I had a listing over, where Georgetown baseball diamonds are? Right over in there. We had one contract that fell through. Boom, it was inspection issues. They weren't willing to bend. We were trying to give them money rather than doing the fixes, because money-wise, she just couldn't do the fixes without selling the house first. So they ended up backing out, and then the second one came through. Everything was moving along great. I talked to the agent 30 minutes before I called my client. She was like, yep, everything's moving along good. About 15 minutes later, she calls me, and about 15 minutes later, I call my client and say, it was a Friday, I was heading out of town, and I was like, hey, just want to let you know I talked to the agent. Everything's moving along great. Everything's running great. 5 minutes after I hang up with her, the agent calls me back and says, hey, this isn't going to happen. My buyer's co-signer decided they didn't want him to buy anymore. So within 30 minutes, I go from telling my client, everything's going perfect, it looks like we're going to be closing out, we're good to go, to we're going back on the market. And the way I handled that is I was just like, hey, it fell through, so we're going to be mutually releasing, and then we're going to get it right back on the market, start up our marketing again, and just kind of, here's the bad, but this is how we're going to fix it.
So what lesson did you learn through all that? What was your biggest takeaway, and what made you more of an experienced agent from that situation?
Really being able to just handle the bad news, because I could have been freaking out too and been like, hey, this thing's falling apart, blah, 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 started blaming other people, but I was just like, nope, hey, look, buyer's co-signer fell through, they can't continue with the loan, but guess what, we're going to get it back on the market, get everything going again, and then we sold it, 4 days later we were under contract for our third deal on that one, which doesn't look good as an agent side, because then the agents pull it up and they're like, 1, 2 already? Come on now. So that's probably been one of the toughest ones. We try to avoid them because we try and get out in front of everything before they kind of bottle up into these terrible, terrible conversations. We try to pick it off as it comes in. That way you don't have one big spot where it's just and everything explodes.
And then everyone's panicked and everyone's super reactive. And that's a challenge that I have in my business, is trying to get back to a place of being centered so that we can have that clear communication, and that they know it's not nearly as personal, it's not nearly as big of a deal as we want to make it, but just having that clear communication.
Yeah, so what's been one of the toughest conversations you've had to have from a loan officer standpoint?
Oh man, unfortunately, my job, I have to have a lot of them. That's something where, through different personal journeys that I've gone on, it makes it a lot easier to talk with people, because a lot of times I have to deal with like a divorce situation or the death of someone in their family, or I have to talk to someone about like a past relationship where they co-signed on a car that they no longer have. There's a lot of touchy situations. Probably the hardest conversation that I've ever had to have. That's a really hard one. Probably just it's probably the same conversation I've had dozens of times, which is, hey, I know you made a mistake 2 years ago, a year ago, 30 days ago, but because of your mistakes in the past, they affect you to this day, and there's nothing I can do. The best story that I have, though, is how I was in the last week under contract, and we had 1 week until closing. And we are right there. I'm excited. Both the listing agent and the buyer's agent, they both know me, and they're both talking to me. And I'm like, hey, guys, clear to close. We are ready to go. In that last 7 days, they decided to go buy a French bulldog that they spent $10,000 on. They financed the whole thing, and then that payment actually showed up on their credit amount as $850 a month, blew their debt-to-income ratio, no longer could get them a deal.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that one was...
Could they just return the dog? No refunds? All sales are final?
Yeah, they were stuck with that dog, because at that point, it's like, do you want your dog or do you want the house? And I told him, I was like, guys, if you would have bought the dog after closing, it wouldn't have been an issue. But you wanted to buy the dog before closing because of that impulse control.
Yeah.
And that's something a lot of first-time home buyers, I don't think, realize, is how big finance payments are and installment loans are against you, and how much they hurt you. Because like if you buy like that fancy truck, or you buy that fancy French bulldog, there's nothing I can do for you at that point, because then your debt to income ratio might be like 60%.
Yeah, no good. That would be brutal. So how has that been with your experience with friends and family? Because I've heard other loan officers talk about it. Is sometimes friends and family don't want to necessarily use you because you get to do a deep dive on their finances, and they feel a little weirded out about that. So do you have any stories about that, or like how has that been? What have you seen on that aspect of it?
That's a challenge, to be honest, because you are seeing people in a very emotionally vulnerable state, which is their personal finances. And a lot of times with friends, they know that they can trust me and that they'll come to me. And I do a lot of loans for my friends, because I always tell them that, hey, you can trust me. I'm not going to screw you over. I'm going to help you to the best of my ability, and that we're going to get you into a house. Now, with family, it's kind of a different situation, to be honest. I have done loans for almost all of my friends, but I've done maybe one loan for a family member. And it's challenging because of different mindsets that we have growing up, and that they can still see you as, that little boy or little girl, instead of seeing you as a professional that you've grown to become. So through family support, it can be really challenging at times, because you are taking a deep look into all the financial mistakes they've ever made. You are trying to understand how they can help you. And the support from family can be really hard as a loan officer, because you are looking at all their finances.
Yeah, the people just feel they're like, yeah, you know what? No. But speaking of that, people that you grew up around, seeing you as that little boy, I feel like content is one of those big things that has helped me get over that hurdle and kind of earn that respect more, because they see you in it day in and day out. They understand, like, I feel like after that first year, they're like, okay, he's somewhat legit. He knows what he's talking about, and actually got some referrals for out-of-state sellers from family friends, basically. I mean, they were there when I was born, but friends of my parents, and I mean, it was the same thing to start with. You could just tell, and then you just keep staying consistent with the posting and showing up, and then eventually they're like, okay, he's legit about it.
Oh, I mean, you taught me a lot about that, even with content, is just being really raw with it. You told me specifically when we got coffee a couple weeks ago was, hey, be more raw with your content. So that's been a huge focus of mine, to understand that even on social media, when we post pictures from vacations and stuff, it's basically just a highlight reel. So I've been trying to be a lot more honest about what I actually do and how I help people, because it changes people's perception of you. Because it can be the exact same thing, but no one ever posts or talks about those late nights in the office, taking calls at 10 o'clock at night, working 7 days a week straight because your clients, you need to serve them. It's the consistency on content is a game changer, because when I made a TikTok video recently, I'm still getting likes and views on that, even though I made it a week and a half ago. So that's refreshing in people's mind that, hey, I'm available, I'm here to serve you. And quite frankly, we're just more professional than a lot of people are, just because we constantly post. And that's something that honestly I learned from you, and thank you for that.
Yeah. You know, we're always trying to share it's not as hard as people think. Content is not as hard as people think. Literally, I tell people all the time, get your phone up, hold it like this, talk, end it, post it. Don't even rewatch it, because then you're going to be like, oh, I stuttered on that word, or I mispronounced that one, and then you're never going to post it. Whereas if you just record it, post it, guess what? Somebody comments about the, mistake you made, they watch the video at least. That's how I see all my haters. Anybody that ever comments anything hateful, I'm like, dude, thank you for watching, because that shows me that, hey, they took enough time out of their day to watch my entire video, and that's all I want. That's all I want is views. So
yeah, and even just being more authentic with what you're doing, even if it's not industry or business related, showing people who you are, because a lot of times those content pieces that are so clear and edited, they don't get the same interaction that something else does. So a good combination, a good mix of both is really the best way to work content. And that's where, once again, you really taught me, like, hey, don't be afraid to post those photos of you on vacation. I mean, stuff like that, because it creates you more approachable. And that's something that I've really been working on.
Yeah, it opens you up a ton, and Jake does a great job with it. He's got we've got our in-house videographer now, so like his YouTube is super polished, but he's had really good luck lately with doing Facebook Lives in the morning.
Yeah.
So he's been going live and just dropping some knowledge, and then it gets people going. It gets them fired up. So
it's always controversial. It's always like a hot take. It's always like, you're not nearly professional enough in your business. My name's Jake McAfee, real estate.
No, and he's had very good luck with that, and it's engaging, and people absolutely love it. So there's no one way to do content. You can do it a million different ways, and there's no right and there's no wrong way to do it.
And you just get more comfortable. The more often you do it, the more time you're used to looking at a camera or being on camera, the more comfortable you get. Because when I talk to like brand new agents and I try to help them grow their business, they're always like, oh, I hate being on camera. I don't like doing this. And I'm like, well, one, just do it, because you'll become more comfortable and gain more confidence as long as you do it. Would you agree with that? Or?
Oh, 100%. You go back and watch my first video I ever made, and it looked like Jake was standing behind the desk with a gun to my pointed at me, telling me, shoot this video, make this video right now. It's so awkward. I'm so tense. I'm so clear and concise, and just I felt like a robot. And now I make videos, and I'm like, well... it's my hair's a mess, the wind's blowing it everywhere. I'm just like, people are gonna watch it, nobody's gonna care. And even if they do, guess what? It's in and out of the feed in like 15 minutes. They're gonna watch it, scroll, forget. So all it is just trying to stay top of mind for a lot of my content. It's just stay top of mind of real estate Michael.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me into obviously I always talk about, I truly believe that life's a journey, and we're constantly learning, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and we're constantly, basically like a boat in the middle of the ocean, constantly just going up and down in different aspects of life through different waves. What's been the hardest lesson you had to learn in real estate?
That's a tough one. I really don't know. Just because I've had great mentorship from Jake, so a lot of the mistakes that he made, I kind of circumvented those because I knew not to. I would say one of the big ones, one of the big learning periods was my first listing. It was 2 lots for $5,000, and I got a call from title, and they were like, "Hey, there's a lien on this property and his dad's name, and it's attached to the property." And without even thinking, I hang up the phone and I call my client. I'm like, hey, there's a lien, blah, 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 talking to my own man. I had no clue what I was going to do. And I hang up the phone and Jake's like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, well, then why'd you call your client? So I think one of the big learning experiences was like slow things down, take the news, figure out a game plan, and then take it to your client. So it's not so much that you're hiding something from your client. It's you go with them with just say the appraisal's cut, and that's all they know. They're going to be like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to go on? Whereas if you go, hey, the appraisal was cut. I talked with the sellers. They're willing to come down on price. We're good to go.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Well, that's just a different energy between being centered with ourselves and getting really reactive, right?
Yeah.
Because if you just right away call them like, oh my goodness, there's an issue, like they just panic. Whereas with you, what you're saying, you do a lot more consultative selling, which is going to be, hey, this is what happened. Here's a solution. Let's stay calm and we'll weather these bad seas. And that's something that I know I've had to learn through my career as well, is just how do I always make the client feel more comfortable and make them in a way almost feel safe.
Yeah.
Because buying a house is scary.
Well, I think that's one of the big things, especially as a younger guy. I go and show people who could be my parents' house, my grandparents. Some of them, those are actually my favorite clients, or my older clients, my retired clients. I love them. But a big one is like, everybody wants to say fake it till you make it, and I've kind of done the opposite of that. They ask me a question, I don't know it. Hey, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I'll get back to you. I got to ask the listing agent or something like that. I didn't just make something up, because they can smell through that. And I've had clients who've actually said, we really appreciate that like you didn't try and like make something up. You said, hey, you owned up to it. Hey, I don't know this, because not everybody knows everything, but I'm going to get you an answer. And then I got them an answer, and they were super pleased with this. So I think young people getting into it, sometimes they want to just try and make it seem like they're not new. And I think that's a big mistake, because people can see right through that. It's one of those things you just got to be okay with being wrong sometimes.
It comes off more authentic and genuine, and I think that's a mistake. Coming up on 4 years now for me in the lending business, is that one of the biggest mistakes that I made was that I wasn't always the most authentic and genuine. And that's something that through basically personal development, therapy, good groups of friends, a whole bunch of things, is that you get more comfortable being completely authentic and genuine with people, and you get a more centered response. And that was probably one of the lessons that I really learned at the beginning, was how do I be super authentic with people so that they understand where I'm coming from, so that I can set proper expectations, get those commitments, and then they can hold me accountable for what the expectations were. And that all just goes back to being authentic and genuine with people. And that's something you do phenomenal at. You really do. You're very authentic as a person, as an agent. And I think that's why your business has grown so quickly.
Thank you. I mean, some people would disagree that that's a good thing. Specifically Stacy and Jake, but no, I'm just joking. They love it. They miss me when I'm gone, but no, thank you. And I try my best. I am what I am, and people either love me or they don't. It is what it is, but I'm going to keep going about and doing my business, and no reason to get...
And that's amazing that you learned that lesson so early on, because when someone didn't like me, I could have 97% of the people love me, and if 3% of the people didn't like me or had like a disdain for me, I could only focus on those 3% of people. And that's where it's so impressive that like you've learned that lesson for the amount of time that you've been alive and in the business, is that like that's something that I had to learn, honestly, even recently, is that not everyone's going to love you, but as long as I'm honest and authentic, I will feel okay about whatever it is that happened.
Yeah, you'll find your people, and and if it's not that specific person, then it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, how much are you comfortable with me saying or talking about kind of like the little break and then how you got back into the business?
100%, man.
Okay.
Because like that was such a learning motive. Are we live right now too?
No, we're not live.
Oh, okay.
Recording. No, I clapped so I know where to cut it, so that I can cut this out. But I wanted to ask you before I bring it up.
100%, man.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, like if it's just you and I talking before we clap again, it's just that I don't want to get into the gossip of things.
Nope.
But
it was
like,
just going to be more like...
I want to, because like that's the actual learning experience. That's where I've changed. So that's why I was like trying to kind of segue into that.
Yep. So I'll just say, so kind of to switch topics here. Theo, I know you took a little time off from lending. What did you kind of learn from that, or what made you come back to the business?
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, you asking that question now, or are you going to clap again?
I'll clap again.
Okay.
But that's kind of how it's going to be. So, Theo, we're going to kind of transition here. So you took a little time off from lending, and then recently kind of jumped back into it. What made you come back to lending, and kind of what did you figure out when you took that break?
Oh man, this is a good story as long as we got a minute. So for me, basically, I completely changed everything. I turned it on its head. So basically, back in August, for me, I thought I was going to start my own real estate investing and wholesaling business, and I thought that I wasn't happy doing mortgages, and I was like, oh my goodness, like mortgages just aren't for me. I'm out of it. Well, along that way, I focused a ton on personal development, started hanging out with new people, really dove deep into therapy and who I am as a person and how I can really look in the mirror and become a better person and become who I want to become. And so through this segue, I tried a bunch of things. Tried wholesaling, tried real estate investing, and it kept giving me new tools to understand people better and serve them better because I had a wider knowledge base. And then at one point, I was even going to get into car sales just out of nowhere. Like, might as well just go work back at Best Buy. And I don't know if you're religious or not, but for me, I truly believe that God put a question mark, and He didn't mean to put a period there. So that's where I was basically told to, hey, get back into mortgages, and kind of the stars aligned, and I realized that in order for me to take proper accountability, I didn't like my business and what I did because of how I ran my business. It wasn't what I actually did. So I realized that the thing that I love most was just serving people and helping people through these really emotional and scary times of buying a house, because it's probably the biggest investment that anyone will make. So for me, I now had all these tools to better educate and better serve. And when I rewrote my business plan, I said it's going to be a client-centric experience. Everything's going to be focused on the client, for the client, by the client. And if it doesn't serve the client, then we're not going to do that. And so I completely changed it. I mean, a lot of the events that we have in real estate where people go out and have happy hour, you won't see me at those anymore. A lot of the super expensive lunches, dinners, and events that I threw and ran, I'm not going to do those anymore because I want people to use me for the value I bring and the service I bring over anything else. So is when I rewrote that business plan, it really changed my business drastically on how I wanted to run it. I decided that I'm going to run everything as authentic and genuinely as I can. So January 3rd, got back with Nations Lending, and the response has been great because everything's focused on the clients and everything's focused on bringing real value. Because for me, I love helping people by giving my knowledge to make an experience better for them. So that was part of it. Yeah.
I like it. And what was that you said? I'll cut this out. Oh, there was something you said that really just, Oh, it was going to be a good one, too.
Uh-oh, hang on. Story, August, tried something new tools, realized I made a lot of mistakes trying to do it differently. Not going to be a lot of events, drinking and throwing events, not focused as much on referral partners as I am the client.
Okay, I think I got it.
Okay, here we go.
So, that's an amazing story. So what's something that made you say, hey, these events, I'm going to stop doing them. I'm going to stop doing lunches. For me personally, I don't do lunches or coffee with, very, very, very seldomly do I do them.
Yeah.
Just because, like I said, it's people are pulling at you everywhere for your time. And as Jake says, the only free cheese is in the trap.
Yeah.
So, there's always going to be that other shoe that's going to drop. And it's going to, so I just try to stay away from those things. So what kind of made you realize from a loan officer's aspect, where a lot of loan officers do them, that, hey, this isn't really something I'm going to want to do anymore. If so, it's going to be quick, brief, something like that. So what really gave you that idea?
That's a great question, and there's a lot of reasons. So it came back to focusing on being client-centric, because what a lot of people don't know, and that I kind of, in a weird way, want to educate a lot of people, is how many things there are in the real estate business that you don't see in any other business or any other industry, right? Like, we consistently have golf outings where people drink a lot. They go out and they party at these golf outings, or they go to a happy hour and they're partying and drinking at a bar, and they're not focused on serving their client because they're away from it. So I basically said that if we start with the center and have a circle and say, okay, everything's about the client, and then we look at everything we do, then it comes to a point of, if I'm at a golf outing and I'm having drinks with different people, am I putting my referral partners ahead of my clients, or am I putting my clients ahead of my referral partners? And it all starts with, for me, the client. And I realized that in that case, I was putting my referral partners over my clients, which is good for a short-term business model, but I wasn't creating raving fans of my clients. So now everything's focused on my clients and making them raving fans, because if they absolutely love what I do at Bishop Lending, then they will refer both the agent and myself, and it will grow our business more organically. And it just focuses on serving people the most. And I just felt and made a decision that going to lunches, being away, being at happy hours, doing what's fun and crazy, it's not serving people. So that's really where it came from. It's just it wasn't client centric, it was referral partner centric, and at the end of the day, it didn't serve my clients to the best of my abilities.
I like it, yeah. And I mean, it really is, especially with lunches. And personally, we don't do a lot of events. We go to usually one golf outing a year, and then maybe once in a blue moon, a couple of us will go to an event. But for the most part, we don't really do the events. There's nothing wrong with them. It's fantastic. But for me personally, I just don't enjoy it too much. And there's value in it from realtor to realtor. That way they kind of know you. But at the same time, it's like, what value is really going to be there other than making that connection for me, which I can do outside of that.
And what I hear you saying is moderation, right?
Yes.
It's like, hey, we might do one golf outing, but from a lending and from like a partner standpoint, I was doing that like 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Like I was always whining and dining. I was always out with people, and it wasn't serving my clients. So doing it in moderation is okay. But when you're doing it like every week and you have multiple golf outings in a week, it's like, where's your focus really at? Is it really on the client? Or is it just you trying to get more business and build a quick business instead of building the right business?
Yep, exactly. And, and it just goes back to the time. Everybody's yanking at the time. We get invited to the golf outings all the time. And it's just like, how do people go to all these? I mean, you have zero other time.
Well, then something that you and I also struggle with, too, is because we are younger in the business, if we're drinking with other people, or like we are hanging out with other people, and even if they are doing the exact same actions that we can get judged very easily just because of our age. And it doesn't mean that our expertise or our knowledge isn't there, but it's just those actions, and it can give people the wrong perception. So I always say this, and this goes to any and all of the young professionals out there, is that be careful who you enjoy your own personal time with, because your personal activities need to be like with your personal friends and not necessarily with the people that you work with, because it'll give you just a wrong perception of who you really are, and then people will run with that, unfortunately, at times.
I like it. Awesome. Well, we are going to end here with 3 questions for you, Theo.
Hit me.
What is one thing that you learned about yourself from 2022 that you want to take into 2023?
Basically that I needed to be humbled, and I really needed to learn how to serve people better. And with that lesson, it taught me how I needed to be more authentic and more genuine, and just really focus on the right people and not necessarily so many people.
Awesome. And then for 2023, what is one thing you're changing about your business from 2022 into 2023?
We've changed about everything. I don't do lunches anymore. I don't do lunches. I won't do dinners. I won't take you out for drinks. I won't sponsor events. There's a bunch of stuff that I don't do anymore. And everything focuses on the client and organically helping each other grow their business. So for me this year, I really focus on giving my referral partners actual referrals and quality leads, because they're the best fit for my client. So with everything being focused on the client, I try to bring real value versus presentation value.
I like it. And the last one, where can people find you at, Theo?
BishopLending.com. You see it on my stories, you see it everywhere, but I say it because it's really easy to remember. It has my cell phone on there, has my email on there, has my application. Go to BishopLending.com. Follow me on social media. I'm very active on Instagram, Facebook, and soon to come YouTube.
Are they all Theo Bishop, or what's the Instagram handle? Facebook.
Theo_Bishop is Instagram, and then Facebook is Theo J. Bishop.
Awesome, Theo. Well, it was great talking with you, and hopefully we'll have you back in here soon.
Thank you so much, man.